You mentioned like the three story act, right? And you said some kind of like messy middle. So the classic storytelling framework is like setup, conflict, resolution, right? Context of
Mhm.
what's happening, the conflict, maybe the messy process, things didn't go right, and then the resolution, how you solved it. Is that something that you recommend for all case studies? Like a structure similar to that? Or have you used or done any other sort of different ways of writing that story yourself?
Super quickly, are you ever stuck when you're designing a new screen? You're looking at Dribbble, Behance, or Twitter. You spend hours browsing, but you actually can't quite find what you need. Well, you're in luck. I partnered with Mobbin to tell you about their world's largest UX UI library. It's 1,200 apps, 500,000 screens, and 80,000 flows. Screens, videos, prototypes, and more. You can find design patterns in seconds and never run out of inspiration again. I dropped the link in the description. Check them out. Okay, now back to the conversation.
I always try to keep it like, for me, everything is a story. Like every media piece is a story, and it's even if like if you try to find it creative ways to tell the story, there is always different interesting ways and angles to tell the story. But it always have this structure. Always, it always have the beginning, end, and the middle. And middle has to have this transformational moment. Something happened, something was opposing me, and this is how I solved it. Right? Music, advertisement, content, everything we do today, creative pieces out there, content pieces, they have the same structure. So it's pretty much the same with like double diamond or whatever, like design thinking, right? Okay, we can go for this like exactly the steps that were written down in the double diamond or design thinking. Okay, but you can also adjust it. You can be agile in the way you work, and you can pick the pieces that suit that story or that design process the best. So critical thinking, so what type of information you want to present. And so how you do this, it will always still have beginning, middle, and end. The transformation in the middle and the end, that's the opposite of the beginning. That's given. But how you want to tell it, it's a different story. Yes, you can package it differently. You can have 4 mini stories if you have been working on a big platform project. If it was a redesign, it's pretty simple story. Before and after, explorations, opposition, there we go, measurements, proofs, etc. Or if it was a new feature, you were in the dark, you were exploring how to do this again, you didn't know anything, you ended up with knowing something. In the middle, you're going through this messy process, figuring out one insight, somebody's against it, you fight through it, blah, 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 you arrive to a final result, with again, from dark to bright. So the structure is always the same. How you package things, how complex is the story, how many mini stories inside, that could change. Um, just like with the movies, some movies have more hooks, more, I don't know, jump scares, etc. Like those tactics we're using, the frames we're using, like, I guess the tone of the voice of the story could change, but the structure is always kind of the same.
I recently came across this principle called Minto's pyramid principle, and it's a
Yeah.
really interesting one for communication. I like it for case studies just because you get to the meat right at the front, right? So let me
hmm
just break it down for the audience, which is so there's a pyramid, right? The top, middle, and the bottom. So the three act story again. But instead of the conclusion being at the bottom, it's actually at the top. So the results, the key impact, where all the project stands after your good work. So you're just giving the hiring manager, here it is. Here's the abstract of my thesis. Like just take it and run with it. You'll know everything at the first, one or two paragraphs. And then the second layer of this pyramid is your key argument. So imagine the few key features or the few key decisions you made to move the needle, to push that project forward, right? And then the third is like in-depth explanation of like how things were achieved. Maybe it's more processy stuff, maybe it's more appendix sort of stuff or visuals to back up your claim. So what you're doing is
hmm
you're basically reversing. You're saying, hey, I want to front load the information so you don't have to go through the work. If you're interested in it, then you could read more, then you could read more, right? And then obviously you could finish with like learnings or whatever. But I quite
hmm
like that in terms of not only for case studies, but also for presenting your case studies, not just writing your case studies, but
Mm.
present, because you're saying, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today, guys, and then go into it, right?
Yeah.
And you're setting that context up front.
I can add here a little point here around the Minto pyramid. I also quite like it. I personally use it a lot for presentations versus the self-scanning web experiences, because a lot of people I'm not sure why, but a lot of the people don't realize the difference between the website experience and the case study presentation. These are two different case study presentations. One is designed for self-scanning experience, where nobody's here to tell you what to look at, what to know. Here's the extra detail. It's just a self-scan. It has to be self-explanatory. It almost has to tick the boxes to say, yes, here's what I can do well, and here's how I do this. And only it needs to leave you wondering, tell me more about it, sort of, right, for the hiring manager. Whereas when it comes to actual case study presentation, it's a different context. Yeah, the end result still the same, but the way you tell the story is completely different, because now you are here to give you those, like, if you were saying, right, the key argument, what was in the middle, I forgot already, but and then at the end there is like this details, I guess. Yeah, so in that Minto pyramid, it works really well when it comes to presentation, in my experience at least, because your slide is this key point. This is the thing. It could be visual. It could just be a sense of feeling you want people to feel at the moment when you're telling your story. You are here staying, and with your own words can actually expand on those details, arguments, and explaining your thinking. So I personally love the Minto pyramid when you are presenting, because this way you can add a little bit. You can say, here's the like a hook or key argument, and here's the statement. Then you can start adding more arguments why, and then if necessary, if time allows or if the context allows you, you can start adding more details, zooming into details also with your visuals on the presentation, etc. So I kind of find it very useful. However, there is a quick disclaimer here, because I see some people are joining here from Asia, and I guess you, Chris, can tell to this as well. But I know that in some parts of the world, or for example, Germany is a good example, because we are now designing in the remote world, and a lot of the times we're doing it in English, and most of the context requires us to think like Western people, right? Like, this is what we do, to the point, and then we back it up with arguments. In some parts of the world, in some demographies, it's actually the opposite, and we have to account to who you're designing for, just like with my story that I was presenting my case study to designers, not to the business customers. I failed to understand who I'm designing for. And so you always have to remember in which context you're presenting this, because, for example, I know in Germany, the version where it's actually the opposite. You first have to start with arguments and only then lead to the key solutions, because this way people will trust you better, rather than, this is the argument, I told you so, like, that's it. And then if you want, I can give you some arguments. And I feel like it's also because how people think, how academic, bureaucratic is their background, how the story, like in the US, I've heard, for example, the reason why it needs to be to the point is because US has people from all around the world, and to make things a bit easier for everyone, so everybody would understand you need to start simple and then expand and add more layers in complexity. Whereas in other demographies, like in Germany, for example, or maybe in Asia somewhere, you have to start from arguments and then move to the key statements. So it depends always, but this is something to keep in mind if you know what type of clients you're working with.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Any sort of good understanding of your audience will just get the key message across better. And that's basically what we do, right?
Exactly.
As designers. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Want to listen to the full conversation? Click the video on screen now. Subscribe to the channel if you want to join us live. Oh, wait. Okay, fine, you don't have to join us for the live stream, but if you like stuff like this, then click that subscribe button. I'll see you on the inside. Bye!